My name is Jake, and I've never been the kind of guy to spill my emotions out to just anyone. But after what happened, I can't keep this bottled up anymore. It's been eating away at me, piece by piece, since the moment she looked at me that night. That look, the shock, the disbelief, it's burned into my memory like a scar. And the worst part? I wasn't even angry. I just felt empty. Maggie and I had been married for 9 years. It wasn't perfect, but I thought we had something real, something solid. We had history, inside jokes, quiet mornings with coffee, a bond one never questioned. But looking back now, I should have seen it coming. The signs were there, little cracks forming beneath the surface long before everything shattered. Lately, she had been different. Distant. At first, it was small things, missed calls, unread messages, flimsy excuses. Work's been insane, she'd say. Just a girl's night, she'd add. I wanted to believe her. God, I really did. But deep down, I knew better. The tension between us had been simmering for weeks, but the night everything finally fell apart, that was when it reached the boiling point. She had been acting off all day, snapping at me over nothing, glued to her phone, distracted. Even at dinner, she barely touched her plate, just poked at her food like she wasn't really there. And then, out of nowhere, she said it. I'm going out tonight. Not a question. Not a discussion. A statement. Cold. Final. Where? I asked, though I already had a sick feeling in my gut. She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second, but long enough for me to catch it. A party, she finally answered. I set my fork down, my appetite gone. Whose party? She sighed, like I was exhausting her. Does it matter? That was all I needed to hear. My chest tightened, my hands clenching under the table, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had spent months pretending not to see the truth. Not anymore. It's Ryan's, isn't it? That one name sent a ripple through her composure. Just a flicker. A moment of stillness. But I saw it. Ryan. Her ex. The one she swore was nothing but a distant memory. The one she insisted was just a friend. Her silence was louder than any excuse she could have thrown at me. I need some space, she finally muttered, pushing back her chair. I just want to have fun tonight. I should have stopped her. Demanded answers. But something inside me broke. I was done begging for her love. Done trying to make her see what she was throwing away. Go, I said, my voice flat. She looked at me then, waiting for a fight. When I didn't give her one, she rolled her eyes, grabbed her purse, and walked out the door without another word. And that was the moment I made my decision. I wasn't going to sit around like a fool, waiting for her to come back and pretend nothing happened. No. When Maggie walked through that door the next morning, she was going to realize just how badly she had underestimated me. And she was going to regret it. I sat there for a long time after she left. The house felt different, too quiet, too still. I could hear the ticking of the clock in the kitchen, the faint hum of a car passing outside. It was strange how silence could feel so loud. But it wasn't just the quiet that got to me. It was the finality of it. The way she had looked at me before walking out, like I was nothing but an obstacle in her way, something to step over so she could get to where she really wanted to be. I glanced at the empty chair across from me, the untouched plate of food in front of it. She had barely eaten, just pushed her food around like a kid forced to sit through dinner. And yet, when she stood up to leave, she had energy. Excitement. This impatience, like she had been counting down the minutes until she could get away from me. I ran a hand over my face, exhaling sharply. It should have hurt more. I should have felt rage, betrayal, anything other than this strange, hollow acceptance. Maybe I had already known. Maybe I had been bracing for this moment longer than I realized. The truth was, Maggie and I hadn't really been Maggie and I for a long time. The late-night conversations had disappeared. The spontaneous weekend trips. The little affectionate touches, the inside jokes. Gone. Replaced with distance, tension, avoidance. And worst of all, indifference. For a long time, I thought the worst thing in a relationship was anger. But I was wrong. The worst thing was nothing. And that's exactly what I felt now. But that didn't mean I was going to just sit here and let her walk all over me. Slowly, I stood up, pushing my chair back. The legs scraped against the floor, the sound cutting through the silence. If Maggie thought I was going to wait here all night like some clueless, pathetic husband, sitting by the door while she partied with her ex, she had another thing coming. I moved through the house, my mind working faster than my body. There was something freeing about this moment, about finally letting go of the illusion I'd been holding on to. I wasn't going to be her safety net anymore. I wasn't going to be the guy she came back to when she was done playing her little games. I stepped into the bedroom, opened the closet, and stared at her side of it. Her dresses, her shoes, her neatly arranged jewelry. She had always been so meticulous about her things, so particular about how everything was placed. I stood there for a moment, thinking about how different we were. I had always been simple. I didn't need much. But Maggie, she always needed more. More excitement. More attention. More of whatever it was she had been chasing for months. Well, tonight, she was getting exactly what she wanted. And when she walked back through that door, she was going to find out what that really meant. I reached for the first hanger, pulled it down, and tossed the dress onto the bed. Then another. And another. Slowly. Methodically. Not in anger. Not in rage. Just with purpose. Maggie wanted space. She was about to get more than she ever asked for. I moved through the house with a calmness that almost unsettled me. There was no rush, no hesitation. Every action was deliberate, every decision final. I opened drawers, lifted her dresses off hangers, folded the little things she left scattered around. Her makeup brushes on the dresser, the perfume bottles lined up on the bathroom sink, the stack of magazines she barely read but insisted on keeping. For the first time in a long time, I really looked at everything that belonged to Maggie and realized how little of it belonged to us. Somewhere along the way, our life together had stopped being ours. It had become two separate lives, running parallel, occasionally crossing paths, but never truly connected. And now, that realization didn't hurt anymore. I grabbed the suitcase from the top shelf of the closet. The same suitcase we had used on our honeymoon. The one she had packed with excitement in her eyes, talking about all the places we'd explore together. I wondered if she even remembered that now. Probably not. The irony wasn't lost on me as I unzipped it and started packing. Not in anger. Not in revenge. No. I was simply giving her what she so clearly wanted. Space. Freedom. A fresh start away from the man she had already stopped loving. I moved through the bedroom, collecting her things with quiet efficiency. I didn't know how long she planned to be at that party, how late into the night she'd let herself forget about the life she was walking away from. But I wanted everything to be ready for when she came home. I wanted her to see, to know, to feel the consequences of her choices. Her favorite shoes, into the suitcase. The necklace I had given her for our anniversary, the one she used to call her Lucky Charm but hadn't worn in over a year, into the suitcase. The silk robe she always wrapped herself in after a shower, the one I used to love seeing her in, gone. Each item I packed felt like another piece of my past slipping away. Another reminder that the woman I had once built a life with was no longer the person sleeping in my bed. By the time I was finished, the room felt different. Not just emptier. Colder. Like the air itself had changed. I stepped back, taking it all in. This wasn't her home anymore. And deep down, I knew, it hadn't been for a long time. I turned off the bedroom light and walked out, leaving the suitcase by the front door. It sat there like a statement. A silent truth waiting to be acknowledged. Now, all that was left to do was wait. And when Maggie finally came home, the game she had been playing would be over. The house felt foreign now. It wasn't just the emptiness left behind after packing up Maggie's things. It was something deeper, something irreversible. A shift I hadn't anticipated, yet now couldn't ignore. I walked into the living room and sank onto the couch, staring at the darkened TV screen. My own reflection stared back at me, hollow-eyed, shoulders heavy. But I didn't feel broken. Not anymore. I felt resolved. It was like my mind had finally caught up with what my heart had been trying to deny for months. Maggie wasn't coming back. Not in the way I had hoped. I glanced at the clock. 2:13 a.m. She was still at the party. Still with him. I had told myself I wouldn't check, but my hand moved before I could stop it. I unlocked my phone. Opened our message thread. Nothing. No missed calls. No texts. Not that I had expected any. But somehow, the confirmation still stung. My finger hovered over our last conversation from earlier that evening. Her last words. I just need some space. Stop making a big deal out of it. I exhaled through my nose, shaking my head. Wasn't that always the way? When she needed time, space, freedom, I was expected to step aside. But when I needed reassurance, commitment, honesty, I was being too sensitive. Too controlling. Making a big deal out of nothing. It wasn't just about this party. It was about the 1,000 tiny betrayals that had stacked on top of each other until they became impossible to ignore. The way she had stopped reaching for my hand in public. The way she started wearing perfume to girls' nights when she never used to bother before. The way she had become more defensive, more distant, more absent. And now, she wasn't even trying to hide it. I set my phone down, rubbing a hand over my jaw. The weight of the night settled on my chest, but there was no more indecision. No more waiting. When Maggie came home, she would find her suitcase packed. She would see, in undeniable clarity, that I wasn't the fool she thought I was. A sudden gust of wind rattled the window panes. A distant reminder that the world was still moving forward, even as my life was coming apart. I stood up, stretched out the stiffness from my body, and walked toward the kitchen. I needed something to ground me. Something to pull me out of my thoughts. I grabbed a glass, filled it with water, and took a slow sip. The coldness settled in my chest, anchoring me back to reality. 3:07 a.m. Still no sign of her. A small part of me wondered if she would even come home at all. If she had decided to stay with him. Wake up in his bed instead of ours. Would she even care that I knew? I shook my head. It didn't matter anymore. What mattered was what I did next. Leaning against the counter, my eyes drifted toward the front door. Her suitcase sat there, waiting. A final chapter, ready to be closed. And the next time Maggie walked through that door, she wouldn't be coming home. She'd be walking straight into the consequences of her own choices. The first sound I heard was a car door slamming shut. Sharp. Loud. Cutting through the quiet like a knife. My eyes flicked to the clock. 3:42 a.m. I had been sitting here for hours, letting my thoughts wander, letting them settle. But now, the moment had finally arrived. Footsteps clicked against the pavement outside. Slow. Hesitant. She wasn't stumbling drunk, which almost would have been easier. If she had come home tipsy, giggling at some joke only she and Ryan understood, maybe I could have written it off as just another mistake. But this was different. She hesitated before unlocking the door. She knew. The door creaked open, and Maggie stepped inside. I didn't say a word. I just watched. She was still wearing the dress she had left in, but it looked different now. Wrinkled, slightly askew, like she had worn it too long or moved in it too much. Her makeup wasn't as perfect as it had been when she walked out the door. The confidence she had left with, gone. Her eyes landed on the suitcase by the door. She froze. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her purse, her throat working as she swallowed hard. Jake. Her voice was small. Uncertain. I didn't respond right away. I wanted her to feel it. The weight of the silence. The tension in the air. I wanted her to realize something had changed. Finally, I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. You have a good night. Her lips parted like she wanted to answer. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the way I was looking at her. Maybe it was the suitcase. Maybe, for the first time, she understood that she had pushed too far. She swallowed hard. It was just a party. I nodded slowly. Just a party. A beat of silence stretched between us. Then, I gestured toward the suitcase. That's yours. Her breath hitched. What is this? I tilted my head slightly, studying her. It's what you wanted, isn't it? Space. She took a step forward, her expression shifting from shock to something more desperate. Wait. Hold on. You're kicking me out. I let out a small, humorless laugh. No, Maggie. You did that when you walked out of here and went back to him. The color drained from her face. You didn't even try to hide it, I cut in, my voice steady. Not raised. Not angry. Just firm. You didn't lie. You didn't make up an excuse. You just left. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. And that told me everything I needed to know. Maggie shook her head rapidly, like she could rewind the night, undo what had already been done. Jake, it wasn't like that. I arched a brow. Then what was it like? She opened her mouth, closed it. For the first time, she had nothing to say. No justification. No explanation. I stood up, walking toward her, stopping just a few feet away. I loved you, Maggie. My voice was calm, but I saw the impact of my words in the way she flinched. I gave you everything. I let the silence stretch, let the weight of the moment settle. And you spent the night at your ex's house. Her breath hitched. So no, I said, voice low but steady. I'm not kicking you out. I'm just finally accepting the choice you already made. Her eyes glistened with something. Regret. Guilt. Maybe. But it didn't matter. Because it was too late for that now. She glanced at the suitcase again, her breath coming out shaky. I don't have anywhere to go. I shrugged. Not my problem. A silence stretched between us. Heavy. Suffocating. And then, finally, she nodded. Not because she agreed, but because she realized I wasn't going to change my mind. Without another word, she reached for the suitcase. And just like that, the life we had built together was over. I watched as Maggie gripped the handle of the suitcase, her fingers tightening like she was trying to convince herself this wasn't real. Maybe in her mind, this was just another fight. Just another moment where she could push the limits, knowing I'd always be there to pick up the pieces. But not this time. She didn't move right away. Instead, she stood there, staring at me like she was waiting. Like she expected me to break under the weight of the silence. To take it back. To say she could stay. That we could talk this through. That we could fix it. But there was nothing left to fix. The moment she walked out of this house tonight, she had made her choice. And now, she was living with it. She exhaled shakily and took a step toward the door. Then another. But before she could reach it, she stopped. "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms over my chest. "That's not my concern, Maggie." Her head snapped toward me, frustration flashing in her eyes. "You can't just throw me out like this." I let out a quiet laugh. "I'm not throwing you out," I said smoothly. "I'm letting you go. There's a difference." She blinked, like the words took a second to register. Her lips parted. "Jake, please. I made a mistake." That made me pause. A mistake. That's what she was calling it now. A mistake. I pushed off the wall, taking a slow step toward her. "You spent the night at your ex's house, Maggie." My voice was calm. Cold. "That's not a mistake. That's a choice." She shook her head quickly, desperation creeping into her expression. "Nothing happened. I drank too much. I crashed on the couch. That's it. I swear." I almost laughed at the audacity of it. "Nothing happened," I repeated, tilting my head. "You expect me to believe that?" She hesitated. Just for a second. But that tiny, almost imperceptible pause. That was all I needed. "It was just a party," she continued, scrambling for damage control. I lost track of time. I should have called. But, Jake, I swear, it wasn't what you think. I let the silence stretch between us, watching her squirm. She was lying. Maybe not about everything, but about something. And the worst part, she wasn't even good at it anymore. "You know," I said finally, shaking my head, "if you had come home and admitted the truth, if you had owned what you did." I let my words linger. "I might have respected you for it." Her face twisted. "I'm telling you the truth." I raised an eyebrow. "Are you?" She opened her mouth, closed it, and that's when I knew. Even now, even after she had already lost me, she was still trying to manipulate the situation, still trying to control the narrative. But the truth was standing between us. Thick. Undeniable. You can tell yourself whatever you need to, I said finally, stepping back. But it doesn't change anything. She let out a shaky breath. So, that's it. I nodded. Yeah, Maggie. That's it. She didn't say another word. She just looked at me. Really looked at me. Like she was seeing me for the first time. And maybe, in some way, she was. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't the man waiting for her to choose me. I was the man who had finally chosen himself. She swallowed hard, gripped her suitcase, and walked out the door. And I didn't stop her. The door clicked shut behind her. The final punctuation on a chapter one never thought would end this way. I stood there, unmoving, staring at the wood grain like it could give me answers. It didn't. The only thing I felt was the quiet settling around me, pressing in. For the first time in years, I was alone in this house. And yet, I realized something. Being alone wasn't the same as being lonely. Maggie had been gone for a while. Long before she ever walked out that door. I exhaled, dragging a hand over my face, willing myself to feel something, anger, sadness, regret. But the truth was, I had already mourned this marriage long before tonight. This was just the official ending. The confirmation of what I had known deep down for months. Still, habits were hard to break. I caught myself glancing at my phone, half expecting a message. A desperate plea. An apology. A last-minute attempt to manipulate the situation in her favor. But there was nothing. Just an empty notification bar. And a silent room. I wasn't sure what I had expected. Maggie had made her choice. And I had made mine. I turned away from the door, my eyes scanning the living room. It was ours. Had been ours. But suddenly, it looked foreign. The framed pictures on the shelves. The throw blankets draped over the couch. The coffee mugs we had collected over the years. They all felt like relics of a life that didn't belong to me anymore. Maybe it was time to let them go too. I walked toward the bookshelf, reaching for the first framed photo my fingers touched. It was from our 3rd anniversary. A trip to the mountains. Back when we still laughed without effort. When she still looked at me like I was enough. I stared at it for a moment. Then, I turned it face down. One by one, I went through the room, removing the reminders of her. Of us. Not out of spite. Not in anger. Just out of necessity. Because this wasn't our home anymore. It was mine. And it was time I started treating it that way. By the time I was done, the room felt lighter. Not completely. But enough. Enough for me to take my first real breath in what felt like years. I sank onto the couch, staring at the ceiling, letting the exhaustion finally catch up with me. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be moments of doubt. Of loneliness. Of second-guessing. But for the first time in a long time, I also felt something else. Hope. Maggie had spent the night chasing the past. I was finally ready to start my future. Thank you for visiting my YouTube channel. Your support, likes, and comments truly inspire me to create even more engaging content. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. You're a part of this amazing community, and I'm thrilled to share my stories with you. See you in the next video on YouTube.